Every October since 2011, Retro Movie Geek has brought you the spooky side of retro movies. And this year is no different. But remember, we spoil the hell out of every movie we cover. So consider yourself forewarned. Spooky Flix Fest starts now.
Hi, and happy Halloween this month, and welcome to Spooky Flix Fest 2025, where this year's theme is Techno horror. For this episode, your hosts come from the bullpen of Jay of the Dead's new horror movies, the gold standard of horror movie podcasts. And I'm one of 10 hosts, Jay of the Dead, podcasting from Pleasant Grove, Utah. And I am joined today by 3 other hosts, including Dave Dr. Shock Becker, Dr. Walking Dead Kyle Bishop, and Count Macula. Welcome.
Yes, hello, Jason. So excited about Halloween.
Yes, me too. So before we jump in, does anyone have anything that you'd like to say to the Spooky Flix Fest audience?
I didn't prepare any.
No, I didn't. Nothing specific.
Happy Halloween. Watch out for razor blades.
Right.
Go over to Jay the Dead's new horror movies as well, right, Jason?
That's right.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Yes, I think Ron Martin actually has something very special planned for everyone this Halloween over there. But as previously noted, Gilman Joel Robertson, one of our 10 hosts, said the theme for Spooky Flix Fest this year is techno horror, which can be defined as horror movies that explore the terrifying consequences of advancing technology, blending fears of science, machines, and digital innovation with traditional horror elements.
Jason, off the top of your head, is there any way you could give us like 2 or 3 more examples of movies that might fall into this category? I'm just curious what else is out there.
Oh, yeah.
I can.
Yeah, go for it.
It's an area of specialty. So, at the risk of boring everybody, there's a really important horror philosopher named Noah Carroll. And Noah Carroll has a great book called The Philosophy of Horror. And in it, he breaks down some of the archetypal horror narrative structures. And the one that we're really talking about right now is what he calls the overreacher. So the overreacher is the guy who's like, I'm going to do more than I should or am supposed to. Now, most of us would call the overreacher the mad scientist. And so when you think about it that way, this is how I interpret this kind of microgenre. Here's where we're talking about Victor Frankenstein. We're talking about Dr. Henry Jekyll. We're talking about pretty much normal human dudes.
Dr. Pretorius, 2 Dr. Pretoriuses from both Bride of Frankenstein and From Beyond.
Exactly. So we've just got these guys who are messing around with the natural order of things. And what makes it different from, magicians or witch doctors or witches, these are scientists. They abuse science and horrific results happen. That's what, and I love this subgenre because I'm a huge fan of the Frankenstein narratives, but also, you could even throw Bruce Banner in there to a certain extent. We could even call, Tony Stark that way, depending on if you're open-minded enough to read some of the Marvel subplots as horrific.
I always wanted to abuse science, Kyle. From the time I saw that movie, Weird Science, I'm like, I need to abuse
another
science
example.
In this way.
Tragically, Chase, science has abused you.
Yeah, that's true. So
repeatedly.
Yeah, we'll let that go there.
That is
I had
so
something
true.
to say, but I'm going to skip it.
Yes, and we will be actually exploring this horror subgenre more in depth as well. Thank you, Dr. Walking Dead. We're also going to talk about it a little bit over on the Horror Movie Weekly edition for Spooky Flix Fest. So, that is going to set up nicely our spoiler-filled discussion of Paul Verhoeven's Hollow Man, released in the year 2000 on Macula's 14th birthday.
Yes.
Wow. When you say it that way.
Right? So Hollow Man is a sci-fi thriller horror movie. It gets there for me, and it stars Kevin Bacon, Elisabeth Shue, and Josh Brolin. It's rated R, has a runtime of 1 hour, 52 minutes. And here's the premise real quick, and then we're going to hear from the Avengers of horror podcasting. So, team of scientists is working on a top secret government project to give living organisms invisibility, which they have succeeded to do. And this film begins when they are trying to successfully reverse that process. But when the lead scientist begins human trials on himself, the team underestimates the deadly consequences of their ambitions. So, Macula, since this was your birthday movie that year, start us off. What do you think of Hollow Man?
Yeah, and I just want to set the tone for everybody because we really did have a party at Jason's house, and we watched this together, and we were able to have a birthday lunch the next day, even though it's been a couple of weeks since my birthday had transpired. But then I've been doing this thing. I was joking with Jason about how I've been excited about this idea of movies that release on your birthday, and what birthday did they release on, And so I've been doing that for movie after movie after movie. And of course, it's always just some random day. And it almost felt like the 365th movie, that I looked up or had watched was this movie. And I couldn't even believe that it had released on August 4th, 2000. But anyway, I love the idea of how this movie starts with this, like the premise of the movie is so strong for me. And the fact that we walk in and they've already successfully transformed the ape and the dog and several other things to be invisible already. That's the easy part. I think they even say that, that part was easy. But of course, I think the whole point of this is to give the government the ability to spy, or something like that, right? So they're trying to do humans, but the hard part is revisibilizing someone, So I love that this premise going in, and I will say I was just not ready for how cool the special effects were, because the way that they show you becoming invisible or revisible is sort of like layer by layer, which is really interesting. When they inject you with the invisible or the revisible serum, you get to see that working in its as it goes throughout your body, which I thought was really effective as like a visual. But yeah, those are kind of my initial thoughts, Jason. And I love the cat. Let me start here as well, too. I am so glad everyone in this cast I really enjoy. Kevin Bacon is awesome, Elisabeth Shue, and it was fun to see Josh Brolin as well. But even all of these sub-characters who are played by these, I think, great actors who really bring a lot to their characters as well. I just was having a good time with all of their characters and just who they are as people, too.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you, Mac. Okay, Doc Shock, what say you, buddy?
I will agree with Mac that I did like the fact that, when this started, they had already, perfected the invisibility. They were just trying to see if they could then, reverse the process. But if you think about it, this is basically the Invisible Man updated for a modern audience. Because in the original Invisible Man from 1933, that movie starts, he's already invisible. He's already done the process.
That's a good point.
In this one, though, it's that he's the scientist, and it's doing it how they would have done it in more of a modern setting. They're testing it on other subjects first before they do the human trial, especially with it being for the military. They have to see if they can perfect it. And we found out they've done it with a dog, and they've done it with this gorilla. And, there's that great opening scene of a mouse running, and then you see it getting squeezed and then its head bitten off. And so it's like, okay, this is obviously not a human. So that sets that up right away. But unlike the original Invisible Man, we get to know the eventual subject here, who is Kevin Bacon. And we saw what happened to the character that Claude Rains played in the original movie. In this one, we get to know him a little bit, and we see what a short step it will be for him to become the megalomaniac that Claude Rains became in the original Invisible Man, because he's already there. That's already the character of Kevin Bacon. He is so arrogant and self-confident, obviously, but so arrogant when he says at one point, I'm God, almost going back to Frankenstein, with Dr. Frankenstein in that way, where he's like, now what I know what it's like to be God, he considers himself God. But then what to do with the invisibility and what happens with the invisibility and with the characters goes back to the director here, who is Paul Verhoeven. Paul Verhoeven's movies have a string of perversion that runs through them. That's just his films, okay? And I'm not just talking Basic Instinct and Showgirls. You go back to when he was directing in his home country, he's doing movies like Turkish Delight and Katie Tipple, which are they're very sexualized movies. And even, I think his most recent film is Benedetta, which is, it's a drama, but it's not too far off of like a nunsploitation type movie in a way too. But you get that in Hollow Man. It's like, these are skilled scientists, but what do they do with their invisibility? They go into the bathroom to watch women.
Right.
Which is what schoolboys would do if they're thinking, if I'm invisible, I can go into the girls' locker room and blah, 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 But that's what you get with Paul Verhoeven. That's Paul Verhoeven's, I think, sort of not only contribution to the movie, because I think there's also the pacing that he brings to it and also the special effects. I was impressed because I'm thinking, from a movie from 2000, you're thinking with CGI, you're thinking of what is it going to look like. It did not look bad. And part of that, I did watch the making of. Kevin Bacon did get in, they did the green screen, which is something they sort of did with the original movie in a very primitive way. So it wasn't all CGI. There was some other things that they introduced into it. And yeah, that scene of injecting the needle and watching it run through the bloodstream, I thought that was really good. There are some issues, I think, with the characters and where the story ultimately goes. And there's always that thing at the end where a clock is ticking and people are moving at the speed of light. It seems like, to get where they are when they notice what the time is on the clock and where they end up. You can sort of forgive it to a degree, but that's I'll turn it over to, if anybody, to Mr. Bishop, I guess. Dr. Bishop.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. You didn't go through all that school to be called Mr.
That's right. Because Mr. Bishop's his dad.
Well, yeah, Doc Shock. I had someone call me Mr. Shock once. I said, hey, I didn't go to 2 semesters of community college to be called Mr.
You're not Mr. Shock.
That's right.
So I remember seeing this one in the theater, not with vivid memory, but I do remember being pretty blown away by the special effects because, this is 2000. This is 25 years ago. And I did not get a chance to revisit it, just putting that disclaimer out front. But what I remember is that the special effects were really remarkable, and they went to tremendous lengths to map Kevin Bacon's body down to his capillaries. And according to the IMDb trivia, med schools still use those maps of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, I saw that. That was cool.
To study the human body, which is really cool.
Neat.
Apparently including all of his anatomy, which is one of the main things I remember about this movie.
Yes.
You
see it at some point.
You learn all about Kevin's bacon.
Yeah,
yes.
We learn about Kevin's bacon. So I do remember being very impressed by the different special effects and the way it shows not only things moving invisibly, right, where you don't see them, but also the different iterations of the body where you see just part of the body, not all of the body, or the body being made visible by other things that are creating the shape. Pretty impressive. The other thing I wanted to say about it is full-on horror. And I like that, is there have been other explorations of invisibility that are not always necessarily horrifying. And so as much as this is a psychological thriller, I do think it's a horror movie. And I do think we have a great overreacher who, like Dave said, going back to the origin of this narrative, well, cinematic origin, not necessarily the H.G. Wells, but this idea of what would happen if you could make someone invisible and you just happen to make someone truly evil invisible. Maybe you could have picked a better candidate, but then we wouldn't have much of a narrative. So I do like the horror of the show. I'm going to ask you guys who saw it more recently, does it hold up here 25 years later?
Yes, I think so.
I think the effects hold up, but I don't know that the story itself and even some of the, I don't want to say characterizations, because I think the performances are decent enough, but I don't know that it fully holds up. The effects do, which surprised me. I really thought you'd see the CGI and all this other stuff. You don't. I really like the effects. I think they were great.
Well, I was going to say, Jason, just as a filmmaker, like one thing that you have to think about as a filmmaker is how many special effects shots do you have? Because, you know, if you're filming two people drinking coffee at a table, you could just film that and it just goes into the movie. But, you know, if one of those characters is invisible and the cup has to lift up and, you know, whatever, then it's a special effect shot. And how do we erase the person, or how do we show the special effect? And that's what just kept impressing me, is like, this movie is almost 2 hours. And there are so many special effects shot.
Yes.
And I do think that they hold up. And yeah, it's like, just like Doc Shock was saying, is like, you don't see the CGI, really. You're really feeling like you're seeing an invisible person, I thought. So that was impressive. But
Yeah.
I was going to ask Doc Shock, because you mentioned that 1933 one, which I think is a pretty great movie, actually.
Yeah.
And I guess you're right. He started invisible and was trying to become visible again. But one thing that I thought was an interesting take on this, you know, I think in past renditions of The Invisible Man, you know, you drink your potion and you just kind of go invisible. But this one, they show it that it's like a painful process. It really hurts, and you can almost barely survive it,
Right.
which I thought was really powerful. But
I think the process was 10 times better than the technology they were using to try to perfect it, which is basically like connecting the dots. I don't understand that program and why it was taking so long. Okay, let's put this here, this here, this here, this here. Oh, it fell apart. Let's put this here. It's like, it's not even as challenging as Tetris. This program that they were using to put it together, I'm like, this is what they're using. So then finally goes, oh, what if I build a little bridge? Oh, now it works. And this was taking how long?
Yeah.
Of just filling in dots. I mean, come on. I didn't like that. I thought that was kind of like, it's really, you got this great technology and you're sort of displaying it in something that could have been done in BASIC on an Apple IIe,
Dave.
you know, back in the 80s.
I agree with you 100%, but I think I think what we were supposed to take from that is this is a very complex thing that these doctors are understanding, these scientists, and we, the viewers, it's a lot more in depth than it appears. But I agree with you. It's so simplistic looking. It's like, you mean you can't figure this out in 3 minutes?
Yeah, come on. I've been like weeks and weeks and weeks of making this dot blue and this one yellow. You know?
Right. Well, I appreciate what Dr. Walking Dead, your opening when you're talking about techno horror and the overreacher. I love that. So thank you for contributing that. And then Doc Shock, with what you brought in with The Invisible Man, that's how I always thought of this film, Hollow Man, as well. Because my assumption, the fact that he was invisible, period, was okay, well, this must be just an updated Invisible Man story. And the more I thought about it, and especially upon revisiting it here, it's like, yeah, much like the original Claude Rains Invisible Man, he has this aggressive, antagonistic, psychopathic personality, and it gets worse over time. Now, I consulted, as I always do, I looked at what Ebert had to say about this, Roger Ebert, whom I love.
I can't imagine he was a big...
Yeah, he only gave it 2 out of 4 stars, so it was about a 5 out of 10 for him. And he said something really cool, though. He said, although the movie will be compared with the 1933 Claude Rains classic, The Invisible Man, a better parallel is with The Fly, David Cronenberg's 1986 film about a scientist who tests his theories on himself and becomes trapped in the nature of the creature he becomes. And that was pretty cool to think about. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't look at it that way, but it's still that overreacher thing. But yeah, I've always thought of this as just some kind of an Invisible Man remake.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I think that's what it was shooting for anyway. It's just we got to meet the subject beforehand in this version.
Yeah.
So when he changed, it didn't seem like as drastic a change, because when you're hearing them talk about like the Claude Rains character, he seemed like he was a lot more stable, and the serum made him into this psychopath.
Yes.
And in this one, yeah, he becomes definitely, he becomes a murderer. So that right there it's affecting him to that degree. But his personality was already halfway there, if not more. I'd say maybe 60 to 70% already there. before he took the serum. He literally was the worst person in that group to test it on.
Right.
But with his opinion of himself, he was the only one it was going to be tested on.
Yeah.
He named the serum after himself, for Christ's sake. I mean, every one of them.
Yeah. See, I think that's one of the strengths. Yeah, is that showcasing his personality up front is powerful. But yeah,
it works. It gives you an idea of where the character is going to go, but it doesn't really give you the feeling that it's the serum putting him there. Mm-hmm. Because I think, I kind of like what they did when they got the ape back. Is it seemed meek. It seemed like it had calmed down and everything was okay, and they put it back in the cage and it seemed like everything was fine. So they were setting it up a little bit that it was the actual invisibility, the serum that had affected the brain and was making it sort of crazy. But it doesn't work as much when the guy's already mostly there.
Yeah.
As a character, it doesn't give you that same feeling that you get from the original movie.
Right. Good point. Okay, well, we need to start wrapping up with our final thoughts and ratings on this. And let's start out with Dr. Walking Dead on Hollow Man from the year 2000.
It was all right in 2000.
Okay. Good.
I don't think it's a great movie. I think it was cool for the time. I remember not loving it. I thought the effects were really cool, but the more recent Invisible Man film is a much superior film. Mm-hmm. But I haven't seen it probably since the theater, so I am going to eschew a rating.
Okay, so no rating from you. Okay, gotcha.
No, it wouldn't be fair.
I respect that very much.
Yeah, Kagan.
Yeah, Kagan. Anyway. And so, all right, what about you, Doc Shock? What say you, buddy?
I'm going to put this, I think, looking at this 3-movie stretch, this being the third film in Paul Verhoeven's filmography here, I put it in between his previous 2 films. But his previous 2 films were Starship Troopers and Showgirls. But I would say Hollow Man, I think the effects really help it. I think there's enough of a story there that it's engaging. It goes over the top in its characterization. I'm not even going to say performance. I think Kevin Bacon does a good job with the character as written. I just think the character itself is a little too over the top. And when it gets to the end, it gets really kind of, it's like, okay, he's going to keep reappearing until a certain point. And it's like, okay, how did he get there? How did he do this? How did he do that? How did he get on the pipes and lift this guy? I mean, So there are a lot of things when it gets to the end, there's a lot of questions. I'd give it I want to say 6.5, and I don't know that I can go higher. I think 7's too high. I'm going to say 6.5.
Okay.
And a lot of that is toward the effects. It really is.
Wow. Okay. Gotcha. All right, Macula.
Yeah, this movie was something of I don't want to say conundrum, but I was a little torn with this film because I did have such a good time with you and me watching it, Mm-hmm. And I'm glad Dave, too, kind of mentioned this idea of, because I remember as a kid talking about, like, what would you do if you could fly, if you had that superpower? And, of course, you go anywhere you want and this and that or whatever. And what would you do if you had super strength? And then what would you do if you're invisible? And obviously, when you're invisible, your options are kind of, you can sneak up on someone, attack them without them noticing, right? And that's definitely one of the advantages. I guess you could spy on people without them knowing that you're there. And so we do get this, like Dave was saying, we get this sort of like Kevin Bacon's character is starting to explore the, can I get into the girls' locker room, as it were, And watching him do that is not super enjoyable, I will just say. It's like, it's sort of, but I guess what they're showing there, though, is that he's building, because, I mean, you're not going to go, or at least you shouldn't go from being, a scientist to a murderer. So they do kind of bridge that gap with showing him, wait, what if you're invisible and you just do this? And then wait, what if you're invisible and you just sneak into your neighbor's apartment?
Slippery slope.
And then you just do this. And then, so it does increase in that. But the other thing I kept thinking about during this movie for some reason was, like, he is invisible, but he shouldn't have super strength or anything like that. Maybe his adrenaline is just going so much. And like you said, Jason, I think you mentioned, if he's kind of losing his mind and being more and more aggressive, maybe you do kind of have a little bit more strength or something like that. But he can't, he shouldn't be able to walk through walls. And
right.
And there is a great moment, in the first Invisible Man from 1933. It's a very simple way to corner him, as it were. It's like, it really comes down to the fact that it's like, if you're invisible, then you physically interact with things such as the floor. And if your floor is wet or covered in something, then you can see that person, And so when we get that here too, but I think ultimately I really was like torn. I loved the premise. I love that facility that they're in. I love that we spent so much time in that science facility, and this idea of techno horror was really exciting to me, and seeing the technology and stuff. But then again, like I was saying, it's just not super fun to watch him like perving on people and stuff like that. So I sort of was like in the middle of the road, where I'm ultimately just about there with Roger Ebert, with like I'm halfway there. So like I'm like at a 5 out of 10 myself. So
okay, 5 out of 10. All right. Is that a low priority rental for you then?
Oh man, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think catching this when it's streaming somewhere is a good idea if you're kind of up for that. It's definitely rated R, so you don't want to watch it with like your younger kids or something like that. But
right.
But yeah, I would have a difficult time getting excited about like ordering the Blu-ray for me for some reason. But
okay. Yeah, and Dave, your 6.5, Dave, is that a rental though for you?
It's a rental.
Okay,
yeah. This is not something I think you need to rush out and buy unless you are a Paul Verhoeven completist. In which case, you have already bought Showgirl, so why not buy Hollow Man?
Well, the thing is, I just want you guys to know, I think this movie is a lot of fun. I genuinely do. I wish it were more horrific in terms of like the horror. And like I said, it gets to the horror level to me, but it definitely leans in the thriller realm as well. So I guess I wish it were a little more ferocious. And yeah, so maybe they could have cut out like some of the pervy stuff and did more ferocious things, but whatever, that's fine. But yes, the big celebration point on this are the special effects. Even Ebert, I didn't get to mention this, even Ebert said it has some of the most intriguing special effects he had ever seen. He called them astonishing. And indeed they are. So believe it or not, for me, this is a lot of fun. I actually call this a 7.5 out of 10, and I call it a buy it. This is a buy.
And Jason, you do own this on VHS.
Yes,
correct?
I own it on VHS.
I had it on VHS and I have the DVD. So
yeah. Now, super quick, because we're running low on time. Have any of you guys seen Hollow Man 2?
I can't say Hollow Man had me rushing out to see it.
Yeah.
No, I have not seen it.
Yeah, I gotta watch it. I'm pretty sure I own it, but I gotta watch it.
Is any of the original cast back?
I don't even know. I should know this. I'm sure listeners are yelling at us, but
I was telling
Kevin
Jason,
Bacon doesn't usually return. He hasn't been back to the Tremors franchise since the first one.
Oh, it's Christian Slater, you guys. Christian Slater in Hollow Man 2.
Okay, I like Christian Slater. I could see him being interesting in that part.
Oh yeah, for sure. What, Mac? What were you saying?
Well, I was just saying, this is a movie that sort of ends in such a way that you're like, I have no idea how they would do a sequel, unless you just have people making the same mistake over again.
I think that's what it is. Another cocky scientist taking on his research and trying to duplicate it, because I'm sure that the military isn't going to give up on their desire to have this technology. They've obviously put a lot of money and time into it, but
yes.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's what the sequel is.
Yes. Well, maybe next year. We'll talk about that on Spooky Flix Fest. But I want to thank our friends at Retro Movie Geek crew, Joel, Daryl, Peter, and also Tyson and the Mom and Pop Video Shop, because I know this is all kind of like a huge conglomerate of just madness. And so I want to thank them for inviting us to participate. We are Jay of the Dead's New Horror Movies. You can find us at newhorrormovies.com. And in that same feed, at that same website, you have Dr. Walking Dead's solo cast, Dead Man Still Walking, which is great.
True.
And
keep walking.
And one last thing I'd just like to throw out. I'm pretty sure you're going to hear from them this month if you haven't already, but there's a Horror Movie Podcast 3.0 crew now up and running again, revamped. So make sure you check out horrormoviepodcast.net. But on behalf of my dear friends here, Dr. Shock, Dr. Walking Dead, and Count Macula, we all want to wish you a happy Halloween, and thank you for listening to Spooky Flix Fest and Jay of the Dead's New Horror Movies, the HAL 9000 of horror podcasting.
Life, this Venus letter.
Get all the spookiness you can handle this October by subscribing to Mom and Pop Video Shop on YouTube. You can also find Retro Movie Geek on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you dig up your podcasts. And remember, spooky is as spooky does.